Plastic scoops left hanging over an empty pick and mix counter, still in position, still waiting, nothing left to fill. The shelves behind it are stripped bare, the tills are silent. Outside, it's the day after Boxing Day, and families are wandering high streets that no longer make sense. 807 stores, 27,000 people, gone in 42 days. A business that survived 2 world wars, the Great Depression, and the arrival of the supermarket, dismantled in under 6 weeks, the week after Christmas, while the people who controlled the money walked away whole. This isn't a story about a shop that ran out of customers. Customers turned up right to the end, queuing around the block for the closing down sales. This is a story about who decided 42 days was long enough, and who benefited from that decision. To understand what was lost, you have to understand what Woolworths actually was, not as a brand, but as a physical weekly event in the lives of ordinary British families. At its peak, Woolworths pulled 7.5 million shoppers through its doors every single week. Not because of a loyalty scheme, not because of advertising, because it was simply there on every high street, selling everything and nothing in particular. School shirts next to batteries, birthday cards next to tinned paint. People called it the nation's spare drawer. The pick and mix counter was the emotional center of it. A white paper bag, flying saucers, cola bottles, foam shrimps, chocolate eclairs. Nobody rushed you. Nobody watched. For a generation of British children, that counter was the first experience of genuine autonomy, repeated every Saturday, every school holiday, every Christmas. Paul Seaton worked inside that institution for 25 years, through store management, through the IT team, through everything that followed. He now runs the Woolworths Museum, which holds the archive of what the company actually was. What he witnessed at the end matters, because here is the thing about Woolworths: it did not stumble into trouble, it was pushed. In 2001, Kingfisher, the parent company that had owned Woolworths since 1982, decided to demerge the chain. What they did in the process was quietly catastrophic. The properties, the freehold buildings Woolworths had occupied for decades, were separated from the retail business. Kingfisher sold them off. The new independent Woolworths Group, plc, was handed back the same stores on long-term leases, locked in for 30 years, with upward-only rent reviews of 2.5% per year. The rent bill at Demerger was around £70 million a year. By 2008, it had compounded to £160 million a year. There was no exit clause. There was no way to shrink the estate quickly. Whatever happened to sales, the rent kept rising. On top of that, Woolworths inherited £500 million in debt from the separation. A company that had funded its own expansion since the 1920s, never needing to borrow, was now carrying a debt mountain it had not chosen and could not reduce. The private equity firm Apax Partners apparently reached the same conclusion. They looked at the books in the months after the float and walked away quietly. No announcement, no public statement, just a firm that understood distressed assets, deciding there was nothing worth saving at any price. Nobody told the public. Kingfisher lit the fuse. The board then picked up the matches. Trevor Bish-Jones became chief executive after the demerger, and he faced an impossible brief. He had to run a profitable retail business from a cost base that was structurally broken before he arrived. His response was to try to change what Woolworths was. He moved the company upmarket. The strategy became kids and celebrations, a focus on toys, clothing, entertainment, and seasonal products. The budget everyman positioning was quietly abandoned. Pound shops were simultaneously discovering the same customers Woolworths had just walked away from. Poundland, Wilko, and the expanding discount chains moved into affordable everyday goods with lower prices and simpler operations. The vacuum Woolworths left behind did not stay empty for long. Footfall fell from 7.5 million to 4.5 million shoppers a week across the decade. People still had a vague affection for Woolworths. They had just stopped going. Bish-Jones burned what remained of the cash reserves on acquisitions, Bertram Books, and then Total Home Entertainment distribution, doubling down on physical media distribution as a strategic pillar, just as digital downloads were accelerating. The market he was doubling into was shrinking under his feet. The retail consultant Claire Bailey was brought in to fix the supply chain in 2006. What she found was revealing. Only 20 out of more than 800 stores had the correct coat hanger stock. Not a dramatic failure, a mundane one. The kind of operational decay that tells you a business has stopped being managed with any precision. Then came the GMAC deal. Bish-Jones negotiated a complex, untested, asset-based lending arrangement, spent months selling the strategy to GMAC and the banks, persuading them the business had a future. They agreed, and then, almost immediately after the deal closed, he announced his resignation. The lenders were, in the words of people close to the situation, incandescent. They had backed a strategy built around a man who had just told them he was leaving. That same summer, Malcolm Walker, the founder of Iceland, approached the board with a rescue bid, tens of millions of pounds for the store portfolio. The chairman rejected it while sitting on internal forecasts projecting a £50 million operating loss. Between September and the 8th of October 2008, the remaining oxygen ran out entirely. 3 trade credit insurers, Euler Hermes, Atradius and Coface, pulled their cover for Woolworths' suppliers in sequence. This happened 6 weeks before administration. The moment that cover disappeared, suppliers had no protection if Woolworths could not pay, so they demanded immediate cash for every invoice. Going into peak Christmas trading, with no reserves left, the shelves started thinning, the cash evaporated. On the 26th of November, Woolworths entered administration. Deloitte was appointed to manage the process, the same firm that had served as Woolworths' auditor for years, signing off the accounts without caveat. Creditors publicly demanded an investigation into that relationship. Administrator Neville Khan admitted at the February 2009 creditors' meeting that declaring insolvency earlier would have given more time to find a buyer. It had not been declared earlier. Deloitte liquidated 99 years of trading history in 42 days. 3 years later, an employment tribunal found that Deloitte had failed to give proper statutory redundancy notice to store employees. 3,000 workers, those in stores below the legal threshold, were excluded from the £67.8 million compensation award entirely. They received nothing, not because their cases lacked merit, because their stores were too small to trigger the legal requirement. On the 5th of December, Paul Seaton was among 500 senior staff summoned to Woolworths head office. Each was handed a letter from Deloitte. Their building passes were deactivated on the spot. They were told not to come back. On the 22nd of December, closure dates were announced publicly. Staff across the country did not hear it from their managers. They heard it from the BBC. Their jobs ended the moment Boxing Day passed. The stores closed. Claire Robertson wasn't finished. In March 2009, she reopened the Dorchester store under a new name, Wellworths. She rehired 20 former colleagues, stocked the shelves the way she always had, served the same customers she had known for nearly 2 decades, and turned a profit in year 1. Not a nostalgia exercise, a functioning retail business on a high street without the debt mountain. The format worked. It had always worked. What failed wasn't the shop. It was the structure built around it. Then the lawyers arrived. Shop Direct had purchased the Woolworths name for somewhere between £5 million and £10 million and relaunched it as an online retailer. One of the things they used it for was sending legal letters to a Dorchester branch manager who had kept the spirit alive with her own hands. Robertson was forced to rename the store. The website eventually closed in 2015. The name then passed to a German company. Poundland now operates 147 former Woolworths sites. Iceland took 51. The same Malcolm Walker, whose rescue bid the board had rejected that summer, now taking the stores anyway, at liquidation prices on his own terms. 43 sites remain fully vacant. Nobody found a use for them. So here's what the final ledger actually looks like. 3,000 workers received nothing from the Compensation Tribunal, excluded on a technicality Deloitte's own decisions created. 9,000 pensioners were left with a deficit of over £200 million, absorbed by the Pension Protection Fund, meaning absorbed by the public. Unsecured creditors received 10 pence in the pound. Deloitte billed at £22,000 an hour. GMAC, the secured lender, recovered 100% of their £335 million. The people who decided 42 days was long enough walked away whole. Return rumours surface every few years. A fake Twitter account in 2020 claimed Woolworths was coming back. 1 million impressions within hours. In January 2024, the German company that now holds the British name told the BBC the UK was on its bucket list. Neither of these is the real thing. The real thing was the woman behind the counter who knew your order before you'd finished choosing. It was a plastic scoop still hanging over an empty counter on the 27th of December 2008. Still in position, nothing left to fill. That doesn't transfer to a website. It doesn't transfer to a German licensing agreement. It doesn't come back. Woolworths didn't fail because Britain stopped caring. It failed because the people who controlled the debt decided 42 days was long enough, and they walked away whole, while 27,000 people lost their jobs the week after Christmas. If that pattern looks familiar, subscribe. This channel covers it every week. Thank you.